In 218 BC, Hannibal crossed the Alps with 37 war elephants to attack Rome. In 1800, Napoleon crossed with 40,000 men in the dead of winter. The Alps are the most crossed, most fought over, most feared mountain range in history. 8 countries share them. 120 million people visit them every year, and they are melting, losing half their ice since 1850. Here's the geography of the mountains that shaped an entire continent. Fact 50. The Alps stretch across 8 countries. The Alps arc roughly 1,200 kilometers from the French Mediterranean near Nice, all the way to Vienna, crossing 8 different countries. A single mountain range forms the shared spine of half of Europe. Fact 49. The Alps hold 82 peaks above 4,000 meters. The range contains 82 summits taller than 4,000 meters, more high peaks than any other range lying entirely within Europe. Nowhere else on the continent packs so many giants into one chain. Fact 48. The Alps' highest point is claimed by 2 countries. Mont Blanc rises to 4,808 meters, the highest peak in the Alps and in all of Western Europe. Yet France and Italy still dispute exactly whose summit it is. Even the roof of the range is a border argument. Fact 47. The Alps were born when Africa hit Europe. The Alps were thrown up around 65 million years ago, when the African plate collided with Europe, crushing an ancient sea between them. The peaks people ski on today are the wreckage of 2 continents colliding. Just a quick one. Would love if you hit subscribe. Now back to the facts. Fact 46. The Alps are the world's most visited mountains. Around 120 million people visit the Alps every year, making them by far the most visited mountain range on the planet. No other mountains on Earth draw crowds on anything like this scale. Fact 45. The Alps' most famous peak sits on a chocolate bar. The sharp pyramid of the Matterhorn is so iconic it appears on every Toblerone chocolate bar. It is one of the most instantly recognizable mountain silhouettes anywhere in the world. Fact 44. The Alps cost Hannibal half his army. In 218 BC, the general Hannibal drove his army and 37 war elephants across the Alps to strike at Rome, losing roughly half his men to cold and exhaustion. The mountains bled his force before a single battle began. Fact 43. The Alps were Caesar's gateway to conquest. Julius Caesar used the Alpine passes to launch his conquest of Gaul, proving the mountains were as much a doorway as a wall. Whoever controlled the passes could move armies across the continent. Fact 42. The Alps watched Napoleon cross in midwinter. In 1800, Napoleon led 40,000 troops over the icy Great St. Bernard Pass in the dead of winter, stunning enemies who thought such a crossing impossible. He turned the mountains themselves into a weapon of surprise. Fact 41. The Alps split the Roman Empire's reach. The Alps made it hard for even Rome to control northern and southern Europe at the same time, slicing its world in 2. A wall of rock limited the reach of history's greatest empire. Fact 40. The Alps made Charlemagne rich by taxing passes. Charlemagne helped unify Europe partly by seizing the Alpine passes and taxing every merchant who dared to cross them. Control of a few mountain gaps translated directly into wealth and power. Fact 39. The Alps created Switzerland itself. 3 valley communities banded together in 1291 precisely because their Alpine passes were too valuable to leave undefended. An entire country was born from the need to guard mountain roads. Fact 38. The Alps were used to draw national borders. A 1713 peace treaty used the crest of the Alps to define national frontiers, an early case of geography being written directly into law. The mountains became a legal boundary between nations. Fact 37. The Alps' lowest crossing has been used for millennia. The Brenner Pass, at just 1,371 meters, is the lowest and easiest alpine crossing and has carried traffic since the Bronze Age. For thousands of years, it has been the great gateway through the mountains. Fact 36. The Alps have a pass that sheltered travelers for 1,000 years. At the Great St. Bernard Pass, a hospice has offered shelter to freezing travelers for 1,000 years, high in the snow. Generations of monks and their famous rescue dogs guarded this brutal crossing. Fact 35. The Alps held a trade route that ruled for 700 years. The Gotthard Pass controlled trade between northern and southern Europe for some 7 centuries before any tunnel existed. Whoever held this single gap effectively held the purse strings of a continent. Fact 34. The Alps are pierced by the world's longest rail tunnel. The Gotthard Base Tunnel bores 57 kilometers straight through the Alps, the longest railway tunnel on Earth. Engineers finally drilled clean through the barrier that shaped European history. Fact 33. The Alps carry millions of cars beneath their highest peak. The Mont Blanc tunnel funnels around 2 million vehicles a year through nearly 12 kilometers of rock beneath Europe's highest mountain. A 1960s engineering marvel put a highway under the roof of the range. Fact 32. The Alps were once wired to be blown apart. During the Second World War, Switzerland packed its alpine tunnels and bridges with explosives, ready to destroy them rather than let an enemy pass. The mountains were turned into a booby-trapped fortress. Fact 31. The Alps divide Europe's weather in two. The Alps act as a great weather barrier, holding warm Mediterranean air to the south and cold Atlantic air to the north. The two climates collide along the peaks, giving each side a different world. Fact 30. The Alps bury their heights in meters of snow. The highest parts of the Alps can receive 10 to 20 meters of snow a year, feeding the glaciers that store the water. All that piled snow is the raw material of Europe's frozen reservoirs. Fact 29. The Alps are the water tower of a continent. The Rhine, the Rhone, the Po, and the Danube all begin in the Alps, making the range the source of Europe's greatest rivers. Water born on these peaks reaches seas across the whole continent. Fact 28. The Alps meltwater feeds 170 million people. Alpine glaciers and rivers supply fresh water to around 170 million people across several countries. A single mountain range quietly keeps a huge share of Europe alive. Fact 27. The Alps breathe a warm wind that drives people mad. The Föhn, a warm, dry wind pouring down the northern slopes, can raise temperatures by 20 degrees in hours, historically blamed for fires and even madness. The mountains shape not just weather, but mood. Fact 26. The Alps make their own daily storms. The high Alps generate their own weather, brewing almost daily afternoon thunderstorms in summer. The mountains are so vast they behave like an engine, driving the sky above them. Fact 25. The Alps have lost half their ice since 1850. The glaciers of the Alps have shed roughly half their ice volume since 1850, one of the clearest climate signals anywhere on Earth. A frozen landscape thousands of years old is melting within a few generations. Fact 24. The Alps could lose nearly all their glaciers by 2100. If current trends hold, the vast majority of alpine glaciers may vanish by the end of this century. The ice that defined these mountains could largely disappear within a single lifetime. Fact 23. The Alps melting is drying up Europe's rivers. As the glaciers shrink, they are already reducing summer river flows, threatening farming, hydropower, and drinking water across Europe. The loss high in the mountains is felt in lowland fields far away. Fact 22. The Alps snowline climbs higher every decade. The reliable snowline is creeping upward by around 150 meters every decade, and lower ski resorts are already becoming unviable. Whole winter economies are being forced uphill by a warming climate. Fact 21. The Alps melting is redrawing national borders. Because some frontiers were defined by glacier edges, The retreating ice is literally shifting the borders between countries. Nations are quietly renegotiating boundaries as the ice that marked them melts away. Fact 20. The Alps are releasing history from the ice. As the glaciers retreat, they are revealing prehistoric artifacts and even ancient human remains frozen for thousands of years. The warming mountains are handing back the history they long kept sealed. Fact 19. The Alps power Europe with falling water. The Alps generate a large share of Europe's hydroelectric power, and melting glaciers are briefly boosting output before a permanent decline. For now, the vanishing ice is quietly lighting millions of homes. Fact 18. The Alps gave Ötzi, the Iceman, to the world. A 5,000-year-old mummified man, known as Ötzi, emerged from a melting alpine glacier, perfectly preserved with his tools and clothes. The ice kept a Stone Age traveler intact for 50 centuries. Fact 17. The Alps turned surplus milk into Swiss cheese. Isolated alpine dairy farmers with more milk than they could drink learned to preserve it as hard cheese through the winter. Gruyere and Emmental were born directly from the geography of high pastures. Fact 16. The Alps gave the world milk chocolate. That same abundance of rich alpine milk let Swiss makers invent and perfect milk chocolate. A mountain dairy tradition grew into one of the most beloved industries on Earth. Fact 15. The Alps cradled the birth of watchmaking. Watchmaking took root in isolated alpine valleys, where fast mountain streams powered precise machinery and farmers worked indoors all winter. Geography turned remote villages into masters of tiny mechanisms. Fact 14. The Alps invented skiing as transport, not sport. Skiing began not as recreation, but as a way for alpine farmers to move between villages across deep winter snow. A survival skill in the mountains slowly became a global pastime. Fact 13. The Alps opened the world's first modern ski resort. The first modern ski resort opened in Switzerland in 1864, turning peasant transport into the seed of a global industry now worth tens of billions. Mountain necessity became one of the world's great leisure businesses. Fact 12. The Alps gave birth to mountaineering. The first ascent of Mont Blanc in 1786 is widely seen as the birth of modern mountaineering. The Alps did not just hold the peaks, they created the very idea of climbing them for their own sake. Fact 11. The Alps were the birthplace of mountain warfare. Centuries of fighting over the passes made the Alps the cradle of European thinking about terrain, fortification, and mountain defense. Armies learned in these valleys how to wage war on high ground. Fact 10. The Alps divide Europe's languages. The Alps mark the meeting point of the Germanic, Romance, and Slavic language worlds, with tongues shifting from one valley to the next. The mountains sorted the peoples of Europe as surely as they sorted its rivers. Fact 9. The Alps sheltered refugees and outlaws for centuries. The tangled valleys and hidden passes of the Alps have long offered refuge to those fleeing war, persecution, or the law. Difficult terrain that blocked armies also protected the vulnerable. Fact 8. The Alps hold villages sealed off for generations. Some alpine valleys were so cut off that their communities kept unique dialects, dress, and customs for centuries. Isolation by mountain turned a single region into a mosaic of tiny distinct worlds. Fact 7. The Alps rise from an ancient vanished sea. The rock of the high Alps is partly made of the crushed floor of an ancient sea that once lay between Africa and Europe. Fossils of sea creatures now sit thousands of meters above the waves. Fact 6. The Alps are still slowly growing. The Alps are still being pushed upward by the same tectonic forces that raised them, even as erosion wears them down. The mountains are a living tug-of-war between rising rock and grinding weather. Fact 5. The Alps shape the nations around them. The Alps created Switzerland, walled off Italy, and shaped the borders of France, Austria, and beyond. Whole countries were formed and defined by where this single range of mountains happened to rise. Fact 4. The Alps are Europe's Great Divide and meeting place. For 2,000 years, the Alps have been both a barrier that split peoples and a corridor that joined them through its passes. No other feature has done more to shape how Europe is connected and divided. Fact 3. The Alps turned isolation into prosperity. From cheese and chocolate to watches, banking and tourism, the wealth of the Alpine nations grew directly out of coping with the mountains. Hardship in the high valleys was slowly transformed into fortune. Fact 2. The Alps are sending the clearest climate warning on Earth. Melting faster than almost anywhere, the Alps are one of the most visible places on the planet to watch the climate change. The retreat of their ancient ice is a warning written across an entire continent. Fact 1. The Alps are the mountains that made Europe. They stopped empires and funneled armies, split languages and joined trade, birthed nations, sports and industries, and stored the water of a continent. Every major power in European history was shaped by whether it crossed these mountains or was stopped by them. And now, as their ancient ice melts away, the Alps are shaping Europe's future just as powerfully as they shaped its past. Hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the extraordinary geography of the Alps. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for a whole lot more.